For decades, biology has operated on a specific constraint. The oxygen required to sustain life on Earth is generated by sunlight and photosynthesis. But 13,000 feet below the surface, in an environment of total darkness, a team of researchers has identified a physical process that contradicts that rule. The discovery occurred here, in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. This lightless abyssal plain spans a massive section of the Pacific floor between Hawaii and Mexico, covering roughly 1.7 million square miles. Professor Andrew Sweetman and his team deployed benthic chambers to the seafloor to establish a biological baseline. These autonomous chambers seal off a section of the sediment to monitor the local community's oxygen consumption, the rate at which deep-sea organisms breathe. This chart shows the dissolved oxygen levels recorded inside those sealed chambers. While the researchers expected a steady decline as oxygen was used up by respiration, the data shows the opposite. Oxygen concentrations steadily increased over the 48-hour incubation period. Identifying a localized oxygen source miles below the reach of sunlight forces a revision of biological theory. If oxygen can be generated in an environment with zero photosynthesis, the current model for how Earth sustains aerobic life is incomplete. The research team's initial reaction was skepticism, assuming their multi-million-dollar underwater sensors were simply malfunctioning. In the extreme pressure of the abyss, a hardware failure is usually the most likely explanation for data that defies physics. To rule out an error, they recalibrated the equipment and performed secondary testing using the Winkler method, a precise chemical titration technique for measuring dissolved gases. Over several years, they returned for repeat voyages to the Pacific to see if they could disprove their own findings. The anomaly persisted. As seen in this graph, the upward trend occurred across dozens of different experimental chambers and independent tests. The data confirmed that the oxygen generation was both real and occurring across multiple locations. The team named this phenomenon dark oxygen, the production of oxygen that occurs entirely independent of solar energy. Establishing that dark oxygen exists was only the first step. To validate the discovery, the scientists now had to identify the physical mechanism capable of generating a life-sustaining gas on a barren seafloor. The primary suspect was found inside the chambers, potato-shaped lumps on the seafloor called polymetallic nodules. These are small mineral deposits that have formed over millions of years. These nodules are composed of high concentrations of metals, specifically manganese, nickel, copper, and cobalt. These are the same materials used to manufacture high-capacity batteries and semiconductors. Testing these rocks revealed a startling electric charge. Individual nodules measure up to 0.95 volts, nearly 2/3 of an AA battery. Clustered together, their voltages pool to cross the 1.5-volt threshold for seawater electrolysis, using electric current to physically split H2O into hydrogen and oxygen gas. This suggests that the abyssal seafloor functions as a naturally occurring electrochemical grid, capable of generating its own life support through geological processes. This electrochemical mechanism changes the parameters for what we consider a habitable environment in the search for extraterrestrial life. The traditional astrobiological view holds that complex life requires sunlight and photosynthesis. This belief has strictly limited where scientists look for signs of biology in space. The dark oxygen mechanism provides a blueprint for how complex organisms could evolve in totally dark subterranean oceans. It demonstrates that a geological battery could sustain a biosphere in place of a star. There are targets in our own solar system where this geo-battery phenomenon may be happening. Moons like Enceladus and Europa harbor massive, lightless oceans beneath shells of ice, where mineral deposits could be generating oxygen right now. By proving that oxygen does not require a sunlit surface, we have increased the number of potentially habitable environments where complex life might be found. This discovery is emerging at a time when the polymetallic nodules creating this oxygen have become the most coveted unmined resource on the planet. 17 different mining contractors are currently preparing to harvest the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, seeking to secure exploration and extraction rights for the nodules. This rush is driven by the global energy transition. The battery-grade metals found in these nodules are needed for the wind turbines and electric vehicles used to move away from fossil fuels. There is a significant irony in the study's origin. The research was partly funded by the mining industry itself. Companies like the Metals Company originally paid for Sweetman's work as part of the mandatory environmental assessments required for mining licenses. This creates an environmental paradox. The corporate effort to extract materials for green technology risks destroying an oxygen-producing ecosystem before it can be fully understood. The corporate response to the dark oxygen study has been swift and critical. Former mining funders have mobilized to publicly challenge the findings published in Nature Geoscience. At industry conferences, critics argue that the oxygen spikes are an experimental artifact caused by the sensors themselves. They also point to the lack of detected hydrogen as evidence that seawater electrolysis is not the primary cause. Skeptics have also raised thermodynamic concerns, arguing that no continuous energy source has been proven capable of sustaining this chemical reaction on the seafloor indefinitely. While scientific validation of these findings will take years of deliberate study, the mining industry is moving much faster. Large-scale extraction in the Pacific is scheduled to begin by 2026. We are left with a choice. Will we protect the deep sea long enough to understand how its geological batteries work, or will we mine them for our own technology before